The candles in the great hall flickered wildly as a scream cut through the music. Elena Whitmore froze near the tall windows, her heart pounding, as she saw her sister Louisa stumble backward, her gown torn at the shoulder by a jealous guest who had grabbed her too hard during a dance. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Servants rushed forward. Elena's mother, Mrs. Whitmore, shot her a furious look, as if the chaos were somehow Elena's fault for simply existing in the same room. This was the night everything was supposed to change for the Whitmore family, and already it was falling apart. Duke Alaric Ravenswood stood across the hall, watching the commotion with a calm, unreadable expression. He had announced weeks earlier that he must marry before the month ended, or lose control of his family's estate to a distant cousin who cared nothing for the people who depended on it. Every noble family in the region had brought their daughters to this ball, hopping to catch his eye. The Whitmore sisters were no exception. Margaret, the eldest, was elegant and sharp-tongued. Louisa was beautiful and used to being admired. Beatrice, the third sister, was clever with words and knew how to charm a room. Elena, the youngest, was none of these things, or so her family constantly reminded her. She had been called the plain one since she was a child, the quiet one, the one who would likely never marry well if at all. Her sisters teased her gently in public and cruelly in private, and her mother rarely defended her. Tonight, she had been told to stay near the back of the hall, to smile politely, and to not embarrass the family by speaking too much. Elena had agreed, as she always did, because arguing never changed anything. As the servants calmed the crowd and Louisa was led away to fix her torn gown, the music started again, forced and awkward. Elena slipped toward a side door, desperate for a moment away from the noise and the tension pressing on her chest. She did not want to be there when her sisters returned to compete for the Duke's attention. She did not want to watch him choose someone else while her mother whispered about how Elena would never be chosen for anything. Outside, the night air was cool and sharp, a relief after the crowded hall. She walked further than she meant to, past the stone path, toward a quiet garden she did not know belonged to the Duke himself. She thought she was alone. She thought no one would notice her out here, forgotten and unbothered. She had no idea that this small, uncertain step away from the chaos was about to change the direction of her entire life, and that somewhere behind her, footsteps were following through the dark. Elena spun around, startled, ready to apologize for wandering into a private space. A tall man stood a few steps away, his coat unbuttoned, his expression tired in a way that had nothing to do with the party behind them. He did not look like a guest enjoying himself. He looked like someone who had been performing all evening and had finally stepped away to breathe. Elena did not recognize him in the dim light, and he made no effort to announce himself. He asked if she was lost. She admitted she needed a moment away from the noise. Instead of walking away, he sat on a stone bench near a row of quiet flowers and asked her, simply, why she looked like she wanted to disappear. Something about the darkness and the fact that she believed he was only a stranger made Elena answer honestly. She told him she was tired of being compared to her sisters. She told him she did not believe she was meant for grand things, and that she had stopped expecting anyone to notice her at all. He listened without interrupting, which surprised her. Most people either pitied her or ignored her. He did neither. He asked what she enjoyed, away from balls and expectations, and she found herself talking about books, about long walks near the river, about small things she never mentioned to her family because no one had ever asked. He laughed at one of her observations, a real laugh, not the polished kind used in ballrooms. For a while, neither of them mentioned names or titles. It felt to Elena like speaking to someone who did not yet know enough about her to judge her. She did not know that the man across from her held the future of an entire estate in his hands, or that half the women inside that hall had spent the evening trying to win his attention. When a servant's voice called faintly from the house, searching for the Duke, Elena felt her stomach drop. She stood quickly, apologizing, suddenly aware of how improper it was to be alone with him. Before she could hurry away, he asked her name. She hesitated, then told him, expecting nothing to come of it. He said it quietly, as if committing it to memory, and let her go without another word. The next morning, the Whitmore household was thrown into confusion. A formal request had arrived from the Duke's estate, asking for a private introduction to Alina Whitmore. Not Margaret, not Louisa, not Beatrice, servants whispered. Mrs. Whitmore read the letter twice, certain it was a mistake, while Alina stood frozen in the doorway, holding the edge of her sleeve, wondering if the quiet stranger from the garden and the powerful Duke everyone feared and admired were somehow the very same man. Word of the letter spread through the household within hours, and then through the wider circle of nobles by evening. Margaret refused to believe it, insisting there had been a clerical error. Louisa laughed sharply, saying no man of such standing would seriously consider Alina when he could have anyone he wanted. Beatrice said nothing at first, but her silence carried its own quiet anger. Mrs. Whitmore, torn between embarrassment and opportunity, warned Alina not to make a fool of the family if the meeting turned out to be some kind of misunderstanding. Alina barely slept that night. She kept replaying the conversation in the garden, searching for anything she might have said wrong, anything that could explain why a man of his position would ask for her specifically. She did not yet fully believe it was real. Doubt had followed her for years, and it did not disappear simply because a letter arrived with a wax seal. When the formal introduction took place, Alaric requested a private walk through the estate gardens, away from watching eyes. Alina arrived nervous, expecting the conversation to be stiff and formal, nothing like their first meeting. Instead, he greeted her the same way he had that night, without pretense, and admitted he had not expected to feel as drawn to anyone as he had felt speaking with her. He confessed that most conversations he had that evening were rehearsed, filled with careful compliments meant to win his favor, and hers had been the only honest one. Still, doubt pressed on Alina from every direction. Her mother reminded her daily that the match could collapse the moment the Duke's advisors learned of the family's modest finances. Louisa made pointed comments about how such attention rarely lasted. Even Alina's own thoughts betrayed her, whispering that she was being used for some passing amusement before he chose someone more fitting for his position. Meanwhile, pressure grew around Alaric as well. His closest advisor, Lord Haldon, urged him to reconsider, warning that marrying a woman without wealth or strong family connections could weaken his position among the other noble houses. Rival families, hopping to secure the match for their own daughters, began spreading doubts about Alina's character, suggesting she was plain, dull, and unremarkable, unworthy of standing beside a duke. Despite the whispers, Alaric continued meeting Alina in quiet, unannounced moments, drawn not to her name or her family's status, but to the steady honesty she offered without effort. Each conversation chipped away at the false story his advisors tried to tell him, and each moment away from the noise of expectation made him more certain that the woman everyone dismissed as the least likely choice was, in fact, the only one who had never tried to win him at all. Then, without warning, everything shifted. A letter Alina had written to Alaric, explaining her growing feelings and asking for patience while her family adjusted to the sudden attention, never reached him. Louisa, desperate to secure her own place beside the Duke, intercepted the letter before it left the house and replaced it with a cold, dismissive note written in Alina's name, claiming she had no real interest in him and wished for the arrangement to end quietly. Alaric received the false note with quiet confusion, then hurt, then a guarded distance he did not explain to anyone. He stopped requesting private meetings. He avoided sending word to the Whitmore estate. Alina, unaware of what had happened, grew increasingly anxious as days passed without a single message from him. She assumed his advisors had finally convinced him to abandon the match, just as everyone predicted they would. Grace, a servant in the household who had quietly supported Alina from the beginning, noticed Louisa's strange behavior and grew suspicious. She found torn pieces of a discarded letter hidden beneath a cushion in Louisa's room, pieces that matched Alina's handwriting but carried words Alina never wrote. Grace brought the evidence to Alina immediately, and the truth of the sabotage became clear. Alina felt a wave of anger unlike anything she had experienced before, not only at her sister, but at herself for staying silent for so long while others shaped her story for her. She realized that if she did not speak up now, the false version of events would decide her future permanently. Gathering the torn pieces of the letter, she requested an urgent meeting with Alaric, unsure if he would even agree to see her after believing she had rejected him. When they met, Alina laid the truth in front of him without hesitation. She explained the intercepted letter, showed him the evidence Grace had found, and admitted, without pretense, that her feelings for him had only grown stronger since their first conversation in the garden. She told him she understood if trust had already been broken, but she refused to let a lie stand between them without at least trying to correct it. Alaric studied the torn pieces of paper carefully, then looked at her with an expression that mixed relief and quiet anger at the deception. He admitted he had almost given up, believing the cold note reflected her true feelings. Hearing her speak now, plainly and without fear, reminded him exactly why he had chosen to pursue her in the first place. The distance between them began to close, but the truth about Louis's actions still needed to be addressed, and the entire household would soon learn what had truly happened behind closed doors. Word of the deception could not stay hidden for long. Alaric arranged a final gathering at his estate, a formal event where he was expected to announce his choice of bride before the noble families who had waited weeks for an answer. Alina arrived quietly, unsure of what the evening held, while Louisa moved through the crowd with confident smiles, still certain her plan had succeeded. Before the announcement began, Alaric asked Grace to step forward and share what she had found. The torn pieces of the letter were presented in front of the gathered guests, along with a clear comparison to Alina's true handwriting. Gasps spread through the room as the truth became impossible to deny. Louisa's confident expression collapsed into panic, and Mrs. Whitmore's face turned pale as the family's carefully built reputation cracked in front of everyone who mattered. Margaret and Beatrice stood frozen, unsure whether to defend their sister or distance themselves from the scandal unfolding before them. Louisa attempted to explain herself, insisting it had only been a misunderstanding, but the evidence spoke louder than her protests. For the first time in years, the family that had constantly dismissed Alina as the least remarkable daughter found themselves exposed and humbled in front of the very society they had tried so hard to impress. Alaric turned to Alina, ignoring the murmurs around him. He spoke clearly, so that every guest in the hall could hear him without doubt. He said he had spent weeks listening to advisors and rivals tell him who he should choose based on wealth, status, and family standing. Yet none of that mattered when compared to the honesty Alina had shown him from their very first conversation. He said she had never once tried to win him through flattery or performance, and that was exactly why she was the only person he wanted standing beside him. He announced in front of the stunned crowd that Alina Whitmore would be his bride, not because she was the last option remaining, but because she had always been the only one who saw him as a person rather than a title. The room, once filled with whispers of doubt about her, fell into a different kind of silence, one shaped by surprise and quiet respect. Alina stood at the center of it all, no longer the overlooked daughter hiding near the back of a crowded hall. Her sisters, who once believed she would never be chosen for anything, now watched as she stepped forward to accept a future none of them had imagined possible for her. Weeks later, as the wedding bells rang across the estate, Alina walked forward not as the girl everyone forgot, but as the woman a duke had chosen above every other option laid before him, proving that true worth was never about being first in line, but about being real.